Welcome back, everybody, to another EDH deck tech. Today is on Nihiloor, who is one of the new commanders from the Adventures from Forgotten Realms EDH decks. But before we get into the commander, let's go. I wanted to remind you to please like, comment, and subscribe on the video and on my YouTube channel. Also, if you please go and follow me on twitch.tv/Jarvis_Moonbeam and on Twitter and Instagram at Jarvis_Moonbeam. You could also join my Discord by following the link in the description of the video. Another plus to following my Discord is you can help me decide which commander I'm going to do next, as one of my community members has decided here. Getting into it, Nihiloor is 2 white, a blue, and a black. Legendary creature horror, that's a 3/5. When it enters the battlefield, for each opponent, tap up to 1 untapped target creature you control. When you do, gain control of target creature that player controls with power less than or equal to the tapped creature's power for as long as you control him. Whenever you attack with a creature an opponent owns, you gain 2 life and that player loses 2 life. I apologize if I mispronounced his name. I do not know my Dungeons & Dragons characters that well. But with him stealing opponent's creatures right off the bat, a big theme of this deck is going to be theft and theft effects. The first one being Nightveil Spectre, which is Dimir. Flying, when it deals combat damage to a player, that player exiles the top card of his or her library, and you may play cards exiled with Nightveil Spectre. Opposition Agent, 2 and a black, flash. You control your opponents while they're searching their libraries. When an opponent is searching their library, they exile each card they find. You may play those cards for as long as they remain exiled, and you may spend mana as though or mana of any color to cast them. Thief of Sanity, 1 a blue and a black, flying. When it deals combat damage to a player, look at the top 3 cards of that player's library. Exile 1 of them face down, and then put the rest into their graveyard. For as long as that card remains exiled, you may look at it. You may cast it, and you may spend mana as though or mana of any type to cast that spell. Hostage Taker, 2 a blue and a black. When it enters the battlefield, exile another target creature or artifact until Hostage Taker leaves the battlefield. You may cast that card for as long as it remains exiled, and you may spend mana as though or mana of any type to cast that spell. Sower of Temptation, 2 blue. Flying, when it enters the battlefield, gain control of target creature for as long as Sower of Temptation remains on the battlefield. Perplexing Chimera, 4 and a blue. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may exchange control of Perplexing Chimera and that spell. If you do, you may choose new targets for the spell. And most importantly, if the spell becomes a permanent, you control that permanent. Send Triplets. The original Esper Steal Your Stuff Commander. Maybe not original, but the most popular. 2 a white, a blue, and a black. At the beginning of your upkeep, choose target opponent. This turn, that player can't cast spells or activate abilities, and plays with their hand revealed. You may play lands and cast spells from that player's hand this turn. Turgid, God of Fright. 3 black, Menace. Whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent or discards a permanent card, you may put that card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. You also have the flip side of Turgid, which is a Turgid's Lantern, 3 and a black. Tap it, target player loses 3 life unless they sacrifice a non-land permanent or discard a card. And 3 and a black, untap Turgid's Lantern. Xanathar, Guild Kingpin, 4 a blue and a black. At the beginning of your upkeep, choose target opponent. Until end of turn, that player can't cast spells. You may look at the top card of their library anytime. You may play the top card of their library, and you may spend mana as though or mana of any color to cast spells this way. Agent of Treachery, 5 blue. When it enters the battlefield, gain control of target permanent. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 3 or more permanents you don't own, draw 3 cards. Dominate, X1 blue. Gain control of target creature with converted mana cost X or less. Mnemonic Betrayal, 1 black. Exile all cards from all opponents' graveyards. You may cast those cards this turn, and you may spend mana as though or mana of any type to cast those spells. At the beginning of the next end step, if any of those cards remain exiled, return them to their owner's graveyards. And you exile Mnemonic Betrayal. Sudden Substitution, 2 blue. Split second, exchange control of target non-creature spell and target creature, and the spell's controller may choose new targets for it. Blatant Thievery, 4 blue. For each opponent, gain control of target permanent that player controls. Expropriate, 7 blue. Council's Dilemma. Starting with you, each player votes for time or money. For each time vote, take an extra turn after this one. For each money vote, choose a permanent owned by the voter and gain control of it. Exile Expropriate. Cunning Rhetoric, 2 and a black. Whenever an opponent attacks you and or one or more planeswalkers you control, exile the top card of that player's library. You may play that card for as long as it remains exiled, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast it. Now, since you're going to be stealing your opponent's things, they're not going to be very happy with you. So to give you some protection, you're going to play some pillowfort and as well as some hate pieces. The first hate piece is going to be Dothy Voidwalker. Black, black, shadow. If a card would be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, instead of exile it with a void counter on it, sacrifice Dothy Voidwalker, choose an exile card an opponent owns with a void counter on it. You may play it this turn without paying its mana cost. Xanathar Magistrate, 1 and a white. Your opponents can't cast spells from anywhere other than their hands. Watha Hazid Profiteer, 1 a white and a blue. For a white and a blue, you can tap it and put a bribery counter on target creature you don't control. Its controller draws a card. Creatures with bribery counters on them can't attack or block. Grand Arbiter Augustine IV, 2 a white and a blue. White spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Blue spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. And spells your opponent's cast cost 1 more to cast. Teferi Time Raveler, 1 a white and a blue. Each opponent can cast spells only anytime they can cast a sorcery. The +1 is until your next turn you may cast sorcery spells as though they had flash. And the -3 is return up to 1 target artifact, creature, or enchantment to its owner's hand and draw a card. And the loyalty starts at 4. Crawl Space, 3 generic. No more than 2 creatures can attack you each combat. Norn's Annex, 3 Phyrexian white, Phyrexian white. Creatures you can't attack you or a planeswalker you control unless your controller pays Phyrexian white for each of those creatures. Blind Obedience, 1 and a white. Extort. Artifacts and creatures your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped. Rest in Peace, 1 and a white. When it enters the battlefield, exile all cards from all graveyards. If a card or token will be put into a graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. Ghostly Prison, 2 and a white. Creatures can't attack you unless their controller pays 2 for each creature they control that's attacking you. Propaganda, 2 and a blue. Creatures can't attack you unless their controller pays 2 generic for each controller they control that's attacking you. Sphere of Safety, 4 and a white. Creatures can't attack you or a planeswalker you control unless the controller pays X for each of those creatures, where X is the number of enchantments you control. Now we have the interaction and other good stuff. Card draw, things that synergize really well with the deck, etc. Razilax, Illithid Scholar, 1 blue blue. Whenever a creature you control becomes blocked, you may return it to its owner's hand. Whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, draw a card. Solemn Simulacrum, 4 generic. When it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic land card. Put that card onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle, and when it dies, you may draw a card. Thassa Deep Dwelling, 3 and a blue. This is one of the most important cards in our deck, and you'll see later we also do play Conjurer's Closet. The reason why it's important is her static ability that triggers at your end step. But she is an indestructible as long as your devotion to blue is less than 5. Thassa isn't a creature. At the beginning of your end step, exile up to 1 target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under your control. And for 3 and a blue, tap another target creature. The reason why this is important, twofold. You could either go and flicker one of the creatures that that Nihiloor stole, and in doing that, you make it a new instance of that creature, meaning that if they do remove your commander, they don't get that creature back. Or if after you go and have all the creatures underneath your control, where you don't have to worry about giving them back, you could go and flicker your commander again and steal new creatures. Wandering Archaic is 5 generic. Whenever an opponent casts an instant or sorcery spell, they may pay 2 generic. If they don't, you may copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. The backside is Explore the Vast Lands. For 3 generic, each player looks at the top 5 cards of their library, reveals a land card and or an instant or sorcery card from among them, then puts the card they revealed this way into their hand and the rest on the bottom of their library in a random order. Each player gains 3 life. Dakkon Shadow Slayer. White, blue, black. When it enters the battlefield, it enters with the number of loyalty counters on him equal to the number of lands you control. +1 is Surveil 2, -3 is Exile target creature, -6 is you may put an artifact card from your hand or graveyard onto the battlefield. I like Dakkon a lot because I think he scales well to any point of the game. So for me, any Esper deck should really be playing him as a Planeswalker. Path to Exile, 1 white. Exile target creature, its controller may search your library for a basic land card. Put that card onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle their library. Swords to Plowshares, 1 white. Exile target creature, its controller gains life equal to its power. Vampiric Tutor, 1 black. Search your library for a card, then shuffle your library, put that card on top of it, you lose 2 life. Cyclonic Rift, 1 and a white. Return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand, and you can overload it for 6 and a blue. Damn, black. Destroy target creature. A creature destroyed this way can't be regenerated. It can also be overloaded for 2 white. Demonic Tutor, 1 and a black. Search your library for a card, put that card into your hand, and then shuffle your library. Dovin's Veto, white and a blue. This spell can't be countered. Counter target non-creature spell. Mana Drain, blue. Counter target spell. At the beginning of your next main phase, add an amount of colorless equal to that spell's converted mana cost. Anguished Unmaking, 1 a white and a black. Exile target non-land permanent, you lose 3 life. Fierce Guardianship, 2 and a blue. If you control a commander, you may cast a spell without paying its mana cost. Counter target non-creature spell. Generous Gift is 2 and a white. Destroy target permanent. Its controller creates a 3/3 green elephant creature token. Teferi's Protection, 2 and a white. Until your next turn, your life total can't change, and you gain protection from everything. All permanents control phase out. Exile Teferi's Protection. Deadly Rollick, 3 and a black. If you control a commander, you may cast a spell without paying its mana cost. Exile target creature. Supreme Verdict, 1 white, blue. It cannot be countered. Destroy all creatures. Wrath of God, 2 white. Destroy all creatures. They can't be regenerated. Merciless Eviction, 4 white, black. Choose one. Exile all creatures, exile all artifacts, exile all enchantments, or exile all planeswalkers. Shadow Spear, 1 generic. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has trample and lifelink. Most importantly, though, for 1 generic, permanents your opponent's control lose hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Where this is important is you could go and steal your opponent's hexproof creatures if you so want to, and it costs 2 to equip it. Lightning Greaves, 2 colorless, or 2 generic I should say. Equipped creature has haste and shroud. Equip cost is 0. Swiftfoot Boots is 2 generic. Equipped creature has hexproof and haste. Equip 1. Archaeomancer's Map, 2 and a white. When it enters the battlefield, search your library for up to 2 basic plains cards. Reveal them, put them into your hand, and then shuffle. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, if that player controls more lands than you, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. It's a good way to ramp in wipe. Conjurer's Closet. Everything that I said about Thassa Deep Dwelling holds true for Conjurer's Closet. It's 5 generic. At the beginning of your end step, you may exile target creature control, then return that card to the battlefield under your control. Now you will notice I did not include Teleportation Circle, which is the new version from Dungeons & Dragons of Conjurer's Closet and Thassa Deep Dwelling. It has one very important difference. That important difference is with Conjurer's Closet and Thassa Deep Dwelling, when you exile the creature, they return to the battlefield underneath your control. With the Teleportation Portal, they enter underneath the control of their owner. So it wouldn't synergize well with the main theme of the deck. Mystic Remora is a single blue, cumulative upkeep of 1. Whenever target opponent successfully casts a non-creature spell, you may draw a card. That player may pay 4 to counter this effect. Rhystic Study, 2 and a blue. Are you going to pay the 1? Whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may draw a card unless that player pays 1. Smothering Tithe is 3 and a white. Whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2 colorless, or 2 generic. If that player doesn't, you create a colorless treasure artifact token that lets you sacrifice the treasure for mana. And then you have your mana base. Now our mana base is quite expensive and also quite painful. You can put together a more budget mana base that will take down the cost of the deck significantly. However, we are playing with our Soul Ring for 1, and it does what Soul Ring does. Arcane Signet does what Arcane Signet does. Belwar Stone. Talisman of Dominance, which is the Dimir Talisman. Talisman of Hierarchy is the Orzhov Talisman. Talisman of Progress is the Azorius Talisman. You have Skyclave Relic, which is 3 generic, and has Kicker of 3. So for 6 mana, you get 3 copies, 2 additional copies of Skyclave Relic, and it is indestructible. Then we have our lands. We have Adakar Waste, Castle Loch Thwain, Cave of Koilos, City of Brass, Command Tower, Exotic Orchard, Fabled Passage, Forbidden Orchard, Arcane Sanctum, Godless Shrine, Hallowed Fountain, Mana Confluence, Maze of Ith, Morphic Pool, Path of Ancestry, Prismatic Vista, Bajuka Bog, Reflecting Pool, Reliquary Tower, Scavenger Grounds, Sea of Clouds, Strip Mine, Underground River, Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth, Vault of Champions, Watery Grave, 3 islands, 3 plains, and 3 swamps. Now, that's all for this deck tech. Let me know what you think of it, what you would change, maybe how you build a commander, or what you like about how I built the commander. But until next time, have a good one.